Welcome to the Minutes Paintbrush. Today we're going to paint up some Sormcast Eternal Liberators for my Celestial Vindicators army. Alrighty, so welcome back. Time for black primer on the sub-assemblies. We have all these pieces there for our Vindicators. Thank you for welcoming back. I want to welcome you back for the next tutorial when it comes to painting Sormcast Eternals, Celestial Vindicators. First, we're going to start with a base color of Sotek green, and it is 90% all over, trying to leave some shadows every now and again. It's very thin, and I bring it up ever so slightly, just trying to raise the armor panels where I can to get more fuller and richer, knowing that I'm going to highlight each one of these even further than it is with the base laid down. And I'm only trying to get the armor panels themselves. I'm trying to avoid as much as possible the cape and everything else. Alright, so next up what we do is Temple Guard Blue. That's going to be our second transition color right there. Let's see if we can pick some hot spots going on over there. Now, this paint is a little deceptive because it goes on wet, and when it's on wet it looks great, but then it dulls down after time. So sometimes, if I feel like it's going to dull down, I add a little bit of sky blue into it from Vallejo model color, and you can do that liberally to taste if you're doing your own. It's a lot of fun to play around with the paint and to see what you like. Ultimately, these are your models, and what I'm going to do is a stripe, just a quick stripe across the shield there. I'm just trying to get a variation in its shield, so this way, you know, the blends are smooth. Alrighty, so next up, what we're going to do is we're going to continue the process, and you can see how I build it up. This is not just one coat with the airbrush and done. This is several thin layers that I'm applying, building up the coat gradually and making sure those transitions are as flawless as I can make them. Next up, Temple Guard Blue with a mixture of that sky blue from model color, just trying to create real hot spots. When I say mixture, what I'm trying to say is I just take the paint, I dump the Temple Guard Blue, and then before just cleaning and thoroughly cleaning out the brush, what I'm going to do, the airbrush, what I'm going to do is going to add the sky blue in there, so it doesn't come purely sky blue, but it's mixed with the Temple Guard Blue, and this adds a better transition to your models when you're painting your model. The actual paint goes from a gradient more fluidly because you're using some of the base color in there with the highlights to create that real bright hot spots. You're going to see how it really does shine when you do that. I'm going to do the shield as well. You're covering a smaller area than you did with just the Temple Guard Blue, so I'm getting a little closer with the brush, just going a streak, and you see that streak right there. It's kind of like making it shine in its own way. And you could do that liberally throughout the model, wherever you want to bring up and highlight, wherever you want your eye to focus in on when they look at the model, that's what you want to hit. Or you can go from the zenith and go that zenithal kind of priming, but this is where you're putting where the hot spots are, where the light is actually hitting it. And you can do that if you take a picture in black and white with a light overhead. You know exactly where the shadows and the highlights are going to be. Alrighty. Next up, what we're going to do is Drakenhof Nightshade. That's right, the night and the shade is on and in charge. Alright, and what I'm going to do with this shade is I'm just going to get the clothing area between the armor panels. Getting between the armor panels, because that's how I shade in the cloth. Now, some people paint those areas a different color. They paint it black, they paint it all different kinds of colors, and that's really cool. I like that. But me, I like to just make it a darker color than the existing color. I want it thematic. I want it all to kind of blend in. They're starting to become a little autonomous, especially with the Celestial Vindicators in the lore. They're becoming a little more autonomous because they're being reforged so many times, so they're just like machines of death after a while. So what I want to do is them to be autonomous, to have the colors kind of match that, like being a solid different color, but that's just me. All right, time for some Bootstrap leather. I really do like this color for a base for my gold, as well as for leather bits. So I go in and I try to do all the leather bits with it, and that's going to be the base for that. And then I try to hit all the gold pieces that are going to be gold with it as well. Now you can do that, or you could just paint the gold pieces without doing that step, but I always found it to be even better, or easier I should say, when I base coat with this Bootstrap leather. And you could use any brown, it depends. I like Bootstrap leather because it's like a brighter brown, it's not so dark brown, and then, you know, and it's up to you, because that bottom layer, that base layer, is really going to determine what the gold's going to look like on the other side when you post it, because although metallic paints are the minimum of translucent as you can with paint, although if you thin them down, they are translucent. It still shows through, especially if you miss the spot. Brown is a perfect color to have as a backup. Now what I'm doing is taking bone white and I'm adding scratches onto the leather. I do this for all my Stormcast Eternals. And I'm assuming that you haven't seen all the other videos, so I just want to repeat some of the steps in the process here. But it's just basically the same steps over and over again with most of these, with slight different variations. I had Stormcast Eternals that had wings. I had the Retributors as well with that fully gold. And now the Vindicators. I like the Vindicators to paint because there's so much blue. There's not really, you know, your eyes don't draw away with the wings, and your eyes don't draw away from that armor with all the gold trimming that we had on there with the other one, with the Retributors. So yeah, the Liberators actually have a wealth of the blue armor. Okay, so time for some Seraphim Sepia, and what we're doing here is with the Seraphim Sepia, we are just going into that leather right there, and we're just toning it up. And you can do Agrax Earthshade, just depends, or Seraphim Sepia. It's up to taste. Some I've done that, and what I'm doing is experimenting. If you look at my other tutorials, I've used Agrax Earthshade in this step, and I say don't restrict yourself to something. Try something new, see if you like it even better. And with both of these different kind of shades, if you actually put them in an army, you're really not going to notice the difference between both of them, but there is a subtle difference if you just analyze one to the other and pick them up and stare at it. For example, if you enter both of these into a competition, this one with the Agrax Earthshade and the other one with the Seraphim Sepia, then you'll notice that there's a difference. But other than that setting, if you're putting it on the tabletop, it's going to look epic either way. Okay, so now some clay shapers here. I have some rubber and silicone clay shapers. And what I do is I take silly putty and I'm going to mask this area off. And what I'm trying to do is, well, there's two things. With the cape, I want it to be white on the inside and red on the outside. And in order to achieve that, I'm going to have to mask off the area. All right, so now that it's masked off, here I go, just painting that white, and I'm using Vallejo model color white. You can use a lot of different whites. I've used Stynylrez primer. I've used, good golly, I've used so many whites, it's not even funny. I go back and forth with whites. That's because it's like a war, and sometimes I win and sometimes I lose. But I found that using an airbrush and masking off when painting white seems to be the best way to paint white for me personally, until I learn otherwise. But I've just really come up against a brick wall, metaphorically speaking, when it comes to painting white. So I just leave it to the airbrush at this point, and yeah, I keep moving on. I don't have really a lot of time to relegate whether white or what white should I use. I just keep on trying to use a new methodology for white every time I paint white until I get to a place where I'm comfortable. I'm not there yet, but hey, this airbrushing white, it works. So that's what I stick to currently. All right, now time to peel off. When you're peeling off, sometimes you're gonna have to get in there and around. Don't yank it, because if you yank it, you might, break your model somehow, and I don't want you to do that, especially if you have a lot of fiddly bits. Like if there's a Cornite army, then you'll have a lot of fiddly bits that might break off. and you don't want that. So just be careful. Take it off slowly, and you can use the actual silly putty to get any residual silly putty that was there. And this is held on by poster tack, so I'm just going to poster tack it right back in. And there's a silly putty which I'm going to put away, and I've been using the same silly putty for years now, and I've never had to change the silly putty, although I have a new one in the container. Time for some Mephiston Red, and now I'm hand painting the outer cloak. And I'm hand painting the outer cloak because Mephiston Red, I like the Citadel paints because I can actually paint it on, and it doesn't clump up, and you don't really see any paint lines. And you know, they say thin it out more, but I thinned it out more, and I don't know, I just don't see it. But with the Mephiston Red, I really can just get in there and get a base coat in there, and it looks great. It looks great. I do several coats in here. It doesn't look like it because I'm painting it against white, and then, you know, there's a stark transition there. But yeah, it's a little blotchy, and I give it thin coats with some airbrush, with some flow improver as well, and just to make sure that the paint itself just wicks right off the brush and onto the surface evenly and quickly, and you know, not to the point where it's pooling. You don't want to avoid that. That's way too much. It's way too thin out if it's pooling everywhere, or you have way too much on your brush if it's pooling everywhere as well. So what you want to do is just have enough that you can do a couple of coats. Skim milk is usually the consistency everybody talks about, but you know, everybody's skim milk is a little different, right? Alrighty. So yeah, next up we're going to go for black, and I'm going to do some black details on the cloak. I like to do black thunderbolts just because, I don't know, I just was drawn to it. I liked it, and I went for it. So it's going to be thematic for my army, where they have black thunderbolts. The way it is. Alrighty. And doing the outline, it's really important that you keep your hands steady for this, especially because you're putting black on white, and a mess up here will definitely show. So you just have to be careful. Use a little bit of the edge of the brush instead of the tip of the brush to do these things. It will make it easier because it has a raised surface, and the edge of the brush will catch the raised surface better than just the tip of the brush, and there's more control, and that is the name of the game. You always want to be in control of your brush. You always want to be in control of your paint. So controlling it and telling it where to go can get the image that you have in your mind, what your model should look like, onto reality, and that is transferring it from your mind to reality is the artist's way. All right, gold now from Vallejo metal color, and I'm doing the hammer that's in there. And if you can't see that, don't worry, I'm going to zoom in just a bit, but right now I'm just focusing on getting it. There's the zoom. There we go. And now you can see that there's a design there, and I have the thunderbolts, and I just did the gold on there as well, and it really came out really nice. Unfortunately, I can't focus in that very well when I put it that close, so I'm just gonna bring it back a little bit more so you can see the entire process here. Alrighty, so next up what we're doing is Carroburg Crimson. That's a shade, Rob. That's a shade. Yeah, it is a shade, and I put it through the airbrush, and all I do is it creates like a gradient there, and I really do like it. And you know, the actual cape there is I'm putting in the shadows in the recesses with the Carroburg Crimson, and I'm doing it in the matter where I'm not masking off. Now if you don't feel comfortable with this, then absolutely 100% mask off the area before you add in all these shadows. Yeah, because very easily I could have messed this up, but I didn't. I have enough control with an airbrush where I can just hold it into place. And I'm not going to say that's easy because it took me a while to get that control. So it just takes some time and practice, and then you'll just get better. And I just wanted to make a little shortcut there and not have to mask. I'll bet how dangerous that might be. Although, worst case scenario, I just repaint it, and there you go, right? Doesn't take all too much. Alrighty, so next up what we're going to do is we're going to do some highlights with Evil Sunz Scarlet, just really bringing up the edges of the cloak right there, and just getting that bright spot, creating hot spots onto a cape. When you look at a cape, it's a dull area. You kind of want to have colors going from low to dark and really bring that up. And as I'm working, I'm going to put some freehand on cloaks one day when I get really good with the freehand. So that's something I'm studying, that I'm working on myself and growing as an artist. I want to get better at freehands, which means I have to sketch a lot of things until I get well at it and then be able to paint those things, which I have very little skill in doing. But I will definitely try. I wonder if I should do some oil painting. That might help, right? I hope so. Alrighty, so next up, we are going to put in some Mephiston Red again, but this time we're going to do it in on the hilt of the sword. I really like that red hilt of a sword. I mean the red, the red hilt of the hammer. I really do like that red leather kind of look, so I just go for that as well. And usually I highlight that up. I hit it with a shade as well, so I go back and forth with a lot of this. Alrighty, so anywho, we're going into the bone white, and that's where we're going to get in the I guess I don't know, the paper? Is that paper? I wonder what it is. A long scarf like thing? Parchment? I don't know. I'm hitting it with bone white. And it has some symbols on there from Sigmar, which is pretty cool. So I always try to hit it with bone white first, and then hit it with Seraphim Sepia and bring out all those details with the wash. And then I go back and highlight it again with the bone white, so this way I can have hot spots in there and I'm creating variation in tone. And you notice that on my glove I have all these paints on there. That's where I wick off my paint. You want to, you load the brush, it'll have too much paint in it and you need to get the excess off, so I wick it off on my my glove there. If I didn't have my glove, my hand would look like that, so it happens. Alright, it's time for some black. That's right, we're going to get some black areas here. I like to do the tassels in black. I like to do lightning bolts in black. In this case, I'm doing the lightning bolt on his knee right there, just to bring it up and make it black. That's just the theme of my army, that and their tassels are also black. So those are the two things that I like to do in black. So lightning bolts and tassels as well. This is like an accent color. Well, I don't know if you want to call it color, because black is the absence of color, but that's all theoretical at this point. Alright, so now time for some bootstrap leather. Bootstrap leather. One of my favorite paints, I have to say. I do like that richy, creamy way. And what I'm doing is I'm painting all the areas that are going to be in gold into that bootstrap leather. And I think I'm going to stick with that format right there. Because when you paint things in brown before you paint them in gold, there's just so much richer gold on top. That little bit of brown shines through, and even if you miss a little spot, the brown seems to blend in with the gold perfectly. So it actually makes it easier. Adding a step makes it easier. And I know that's kind of hard to imagine, but it just does. It just does. And I like the Vindicators because they do not, the Liberators, because they do not have too much gold in it. Like, it doesn't overwhelm it. I'm a shield, but that's about it. I won't tell you about the Liberators, Vindicators, Retributors, and there's so many names. So many names. Carroburg Crimson time now. And what I'm doing is just getting the hilt of his dagger right there. And I like to do that for the leather of the weapons. I like to paint them Mephiston Red, give them to Carroburg Crimson, and then an orange for a extreme highlight. And that could be, the Citadel orange, which is Wild Rider Red, or it could be my Cador Red highlight. Those are my go-tos, but you can use any orange, really. The colors that I mentioned here are just the ones that I'm using right now, but you can use any variation of the color. Black now, Vallejo model color, and we're going to go and do the lightning bolts on the shield as well. This kind of gets a little tricky because, you have that gradient in there, and I don't want to lose it, so just have to be careful. Notice my pinky's laying on the other hand. Notice that my hands are put together and they're laying on the desk. I am limiting the movement of my my hand so this way my hand doesn't shake, because normally if I'm trying to paint that up in the air, my hand would shake and there's no way I can be able to do it. But since I braced my hands, then it gives me and affords that control. There's that word I'm going to keep on using, that control. You need to have brush control, you have to have control over your hands, whether they're shaking, you have to have control of the paint, you have to control things. So it's all about controlling where the paint goes, how the paint goes, and how you apply it, and making what is in your mind into a reality by doing all those things. Time for some white, and what I'm doing is I'm getting some white onto the banner that's on the shield. Now only the captains have this kind of banner going through. The other Liberators I'm going to paint, I'll paint off screen, will not have the banner. Just wanted to show you what it was really like to paint it with the banner, because there are more steps involved, like this one. All you have to do is just be really careful, work in layers. In other words, thin coats after thin coats after thin coats, and get it to the point where you're happy with it. And it does take a little bit, but you know, it's not too outrageous, it's not too crazy, but as long as you take your time with this step, it should come out fantastic. And you do notice this part, the shield, you notice it's incredible how much you notice the shield when you put them on, because they really are like a highlight. Their shields is what define them as a Liberator. Liberators have shields, and I just keep on thinking of, you know, the Spartans. There you go. Where they had their shield and they shield bash people and everything else, and they work in unison. I think that's where Liberators excel at as well, using their shields. And at least that's the narrative I like to tell myself. Alrighty, so now time for some gold. Now with all the pieces that are brown, with the Bootstrap leather, I'm going to bring that gold in there, and you can see it really just come into place so quick, so easily. And I'm going to go around the entire miniature and do all the gold pieces so you can see the result. Alrighty. So next up, what we're going to do is put some Seraphim Sepia, and what I'm doing here is I am just getting that area where the cloak is, and I'm just washing it, straight washing it. That's right, straight washing that, and it's, you know, really trying to avoid some stains. So you're trying to get the you're trying to not get it to pool any place too badly, trying to wick that off before it starts drying, because once it starts drying, you're going to rip the paint right off there and it's going to look hideous. So you want to kind of work pretty quickly to remove any excess as quickly as possible. Okay, with that done, I'm going to go back to a Vallejo metal color gold, and again go into the trims. And this is what I do, like I'll forget that I did that sword, so I'll go back and correct it with the gold as well. And I go back and forth when I paint. That's just the style and the manner in which I paint. And I'm a messy painter like that because it doesn't go linearly, but in the end, the result's worth it. So I wouldn't beat yourself up for not being linear when you paint. You know, this isn't a math equation. It's definitely not math hammer. Painting is messy, art is messy, and what you're left with is amazing. So as long as you're willing to go through the journey, and there it is. Alrighty, so time for some Reikland Fleshshade. I'm going to dull out this gold, trying to get into the recesses. Now you can use the gloss version of this, which I do not have. Looking to pick up one of these days, possibly. Oh, since it's the holiday season, I might pick that up as well, amongst other things that I may pick up. So that's the idea behind it, at least. I really want to pick things up so this way I can try them out for the channel, try them out for you guys, and let you know my honest opinion about them. Does it work for me in my experience? Does it not? You should know, so you'll be an informed buyer. Alrighty, now some bone white, and just going over that parchment that's on the shield there. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the parchment that we have on the actual Liberator himself, where we're going to do that bone white, and we're going to hit it with Seraphim Sepia, and then we're going to come back with the bone white just to highlight And using these 3 steps, highlight, shade, then highlight again, helps. Then you can do the extreme highlights. If you wanted to extreme highlight bone white, then add some straight white to it and just do like some edge highlighting to it, and that really just brings it out as well if you want to take it to that extra step. And it doesn't take too much to do that, but it is definitely worth it. Alrighty, so next up, what we have here is some gold, some more. And some more gold. Ah, yes, that's right. If you want to highlight gold, then I would go for a bright silver, or I use pale burnt metal quite often, and just put that into the mix as extreme highlights for gold. You already have the Seraphim Sepia for the lowlights, but we go over with the gold again, just to catch the tips of things, while the recesses have the Reikland Fleshshade. It really comes out pretty well. Like, I like the results that I had. I do want to try that gloss Reikland Fleshshade to see how different it really is. And some people mixes 50-50 with Reikland Fleshshade regular and Reikland Fleshshade with the gloss, and that combination seems to work for some people as well. Again, I need to definitely try that out for you guys. Time for that pale burnt metal, and I'm doing the hammer. I like to do it nice and shiny. I hit it with Nun Oil later on and just like really bring down the shine as well, but I leave the actual hammer, the head of the hammer, I leave it pale burnt metal. I do not touch it with any kind of wash or anything like that, because that's the area that hits the ground or hits something as much as possible, so any kind of dulling wouldn't occur on the strike surface itself. It's being used and used often, so that's how I paint it. So pale burnt metal, and then some Nun Oil on the sides and the bottom and the top, but not on the actual face of where it's striking. That area there I leave clean. Alrighty, so I really do enjoy painting up these Judicators, Liberators, I'm sorry, I get confused with the names sometimes. Shield and hammer dudes. That could be it. Alrighty, so some pale burnt metal. I'm going to go on to the tabard, or you want to say the loincloth. I don't know which to call it, but I'm going into the middle there, and usually I hit that middle with that silver, and then I do the outline with some Mephiston Red. And that seems to be just the theme that I do. A lot of people do white around that area, but that is up to you. I don't like painting white, so better. I like painting red a lot better. So that just ties it in for me personally. And again, these models are here for your tastes, what you like to do. So by all means, do what you like to do. Don't feel like you're scripted. You have to follow a script, and this is a recipe, like a cooking recipe, that you need to follow the steps. It is true that if you follow the steps with the exact same paints the exact same way, you will get a different result. Because our brush strokes are completely different. You can't have every single brush stroke that I took. But if you do, I mean, that's amazing. That you memorized every brush stroke. You can get similar effects. I'm not saying you can't, but you can. But just never identical, because none of my models are identical. And I also have sky blue, and I put some flow improver on there and some water. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm just trying to get some edge highlights, and I put some edge highlights on things and trying to brighten things up there. Edge highlights using the side of the brush, not the tip of the brush, in order to really define it. I try to just get the tips. I don't get the entire thing with the heavy metal type of way that I have to edge highlight everything. I only highlight where I think the sun might catch an area. If the sun might catch an area, then that's the area I am going to concentrate on. That's the area where I'm going to focus all my attention on, and I will be able to edge highlight those areas, just the main ones. Alrighty, so now what we're going to do is we're going to get that Nun Oil and wash down the pale burnt metal again on the sides of the hammer, but never on the striking surface. The top and the bottom also gets the treatment as well. And it really dulls down that shine, which is exactly what I wanted to go for. I didn't want it to be all shiny. I wanted it to be all dusty, except for that strike surface as well. This hammer has seen a lot of action. Like, I guess when reforging, I don't think you get a brand new hammer. I don't think the hammer itself gets reforged with you, I think that you get the hammer that you've had. So it should have some grime and grit on it, possibly even a chip or two. But then again, that I wouldn't put a chip on it because, you know, being Sigmar and all goody, I would think that having chips on the armor like that, and it's like, well, no, what do you mean they're fallible? I don't like my Stormcast Eternal to be fallible. To me, they're little angels, so there you go. Even though they're angels of vengeance, so still, I mean, that works for me. Anywho, it's really starting to come out really nice. I really like the way it's turning out with the highlights, the lowlights. That base coating is really epic and a lot of fun. Drakenhof Nightshade is next. That's right, some Drakenhof Nightshade does help. And it's going to darken up the metal that is on the loincloth, that pale burnt metal. I just want to give it a blue tinge to it, kind of really make it like a cold steel, and to dull it down like it's nobody's business, because that's seen some grime right there. So, yep. Definitely a lot of fun painting these models. They lend themselves to the painter. They paint up pretty quickly, in my opinion. Either that or I've gotten better and I didn't realize it. Mephiston Red this time, and we're going to go around the border of the inside of the shield and just edge highlighting using the cider brush instead of the tip of the brush to get this done. It's really simple to be able to do this, and it's the inside of the shield. A lot of people don't look at the inside of the shield, but I do, so then it's really important for me to get it as right as I possibly can. Take your time if you're doing this step. It really does add a lot of definition to it. It's just in case it was just all blue, you want to break that up just a bit, and that definitely breaks it up, and it does well. Alright, now here's where I lay the Easter egg. I write something on the inside of this shield. I was thinking about what to write, and then it just dawned to me. Let me see, T, and then I put an M. I think you know where I'm going with this. And finally, what I'm going to do is put a P. That's right. So there it is. I put the TMP logo right there. That was a lot of fun to do. I kind of like put little Easter eggs in there. You can put anything you want. Again, it's the inside of the shield. Not everybody's going to notice it. You'd have to look for it. So therefore, it's a bona fide Easter egg when it comes to my miniatures. And I kind of like throw in a Easter egg here and there. Put a TMP symbol on everything I kind of paint here and there. You got to literally look for it. But if you do find it, there you go. This one's pretty big. I use a Micron pen, 0.005, usually when writing those things. Although I can do it with a brush, but I don't own a hard enough brush to do it with at the moment. So, I guess it's time for the Micro pen then. And I think it came out pretty cool. And I always like putting a little something of me on the thing. Oh, watch your finger. You can have a gold finger. I think the Cadron Overlords would have a problem with me trying to get that Aether Gold. So, alrighty, so there it is. Let's take a look at what the just about finished product is. And it's looking great. It really looks great for the tabletop. It's going to wow people in the community, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Really get the looks. Alright, now I'm going to throw my paintbrush, because paintbrush throwing, and pale burnt metal is the next color. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to grab it and bring up the shield, the loincloth, I mean, and bring up the little dots on the tip. I'm just like pretty much almost dry brushing effect. I guess I'm just trying to get the edges on those things. Just so this way I can brighten up that loincloth and just pick those little scales out a little bit at a time here and there where I think the light will catch the most, leaving the rest in shadow. Alrighty, we're actually coming to a close very soon. What you're going to want to do with this pale burnt metal also is pick out the rivets. Never not pick out the rivets. Always go for all the rivets throughout the entire model. And because everybody wants to see little details, they're going to bring it close to you, and you're going to want to do that. Now going over to the gold, I'm just doing some highlights, extreme highlights. Extreme highlights of gold is actually white. So I'm putting some pale burnt metal on the tips of these, just so you know that's where I think the light would hit the most. And that's really just bringing up highlights for your gold. So like you have triple highlights sometimes. We have gold, and then you have a shade, and then you bring it back up with the gold, and then you have to bring it up with the silver. The silver really makes a big, huge difference when it comes to painting the gold, because it does become, or looks and appears to be, reflective. And the lighter the reflection, the more reflection it actually gives back to the eye. You can see the hammer head really sparkling when I turn it towards us, the camera. Alrighty, so next up we have the base already on, and I've done a lot of tutorials on the bases. Check out my other tutorials with all the Stormcast Eternals. And what I'm going to do, instead of airbrushing this one on, I'm actually going to paint it on. You're going to see you got to do several thin coats in order to get this on right. And it is a pain to brush Minotaur paints on with a brush, but it can be done, and I want to show that it can be done. You just have to do multiple coats. I think I did 8 or 9 passes, or 8 or 9 coats of this in order to get it where I can get it in 2 passes with an airbrush. Again, using an airbrush saves time. It's a tool. Use the tool in order to accomplish your goals. It's as simple as that, and worthy of the investment. Alright, we're getting into the end of the video. Thank you for joining me, and I think it's now time for the pictures. See ya!
Alright, so those Liberators are rolling off my desk and into my army. Well, if you like this video, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on the Miniatures Paintbrush.